This is a story called The Little Monsters, chapter 113. The kids get caught smoking and drinking and they refuse to cooperate and behave both at school and at home. Over the last few weeks, the gang have been constantly smoking and drinking, both at home and at school. Not only that, they've been constantly refusing to attend classes, to cooperate and behave. They refuse to do anything that their parents and teachers tell them to do. They just do the complete opposite to what they're told. One day they sneaked some booze and cigarettes into school and they sat outside at the back of the school smoking and drinking. However, one of the new teachers, Mr. Grease, saw them and he said to them, "What do you kids think you're doing?" "Mind your own business, sir. We're all 13 now and we can do as we please," said Bumpy. "Wrong, Bumpy. You'll do what you're told when you're told. Now give me those cigarettes and that booze at once, please," said Mr. Grease. "No, we won't, sir. This stuff is ours, not yours, so get lost," said Stumpy, laughing. "Right, if you won't listen to me, you can all come with me to Mrs. Tinker's office," said Mr. Grease. "Oh, get lost, sir. We're staying here," said Grumpy. At that moment, Mr. Grease went to grab their booze and cigarettes, but instead they grabbed him. They tied him to a lamppost, took his shoes, socks and trousers off, gagged him and then walked off the school premises laughing their heads off. When Mr. Grease didn't turn up to take his lesson, the kids in his class caused havoc. When one of the other teachers went to investigate, he found a classroom full of unsupervised kids. He told one of them to go and fetch Mrs. Tinker. When Mrs. Tinker got there, she got the kids to settle down, gave them some work to be getting on with, and asked the teacher, who found the kids unsupervised, to stand in until Mr. Grease could be found. However, Joanne Strawberry was late for school as she'd had an hospital appointment. As she got out of her mum's car, she saw Mr. Grease tied to a lamppost with no trousers on, and she told her mum and they both cracked out laughing. Joanne's mum said to her in between giggles, "Go and get Mrs. Tinker, please, sweetheart." Joanne went to Mrs. Tinker's office, and in between giggles she said to her, "Mrs. Tinker, Mr. Grease is tied to a lamppost with no trousers on." Mrs. Tinker went to investigate and she couldn't help but laugh. She went over and untied Mr. Grease, and in between giggles she asked him, "What happened to you?" "I'm glad you find it funny. The Little Monsters gang did this to me after I caught them drinking and smoking on the school premises. When I told them to give me their booze and cigarettes, they refused, tied me up, gagged me, took off my trousers and walked off the school premises," said Mr. Grease. By this time Mrs. Tinker was laughing so much she could hardly speak. However, as soon as she got back to her office, she rang the gang's parents. When she told them what the kids had done to Mr. Grease, they couldn't help but laugh either. Of course, they fully intend on punishing the kids for what they did to Mr. Grease and for smoking and drinking. When the kids decided to go home, they decided to go to Kicker's house for a while so that they could play computer games. However, when they got there, her dad said to them, "Why have you kids been smoking and drinking at school?" "Oh, mind your own business, Dad. We're 13 now and we're old enough to do as we please, when we please. We don't need anyone's permission," answered Kicker. Who do you think you're talking to, young lady? You're not old enough to do what you like when you like. You do what you're told when you're told, shouted Kicker's dad. Oh, whatever, Dad. Like we care. Come on, guys, let's go upstairs and play computer games, said Kicker. Kicker, go to your room. I'll deal with you later. The rest of you down here while I phone your parents, said Kicker's dad. As soon as Kicker's dad turned his back, they all went upstairs into Kicker's games room to play video games. When he went after them, they shut the door in his face and wouldn't let them in. They stayed there for hours playing video games and smoking and drinking. In the end, Kicker's dad managed to get in and he tried to take their cigarettes and booze off them. As he was doing so, Kicker grabbed him and kicked him really hard on his shin and took their stuff. Then they barricaded themselves in Kicker's games room and they wouldn't come out. After a couple of hours, Creeper needed the toilet, so they moved everything away from the door so she could get out. However, what they didn't realise was that their parents were waiting for them outside the room. As soon as they opened the door, they grabbed them, but they wriggled free and went back in the games room. In the end, Kicker's dad took the door off its hinges, but the kids ran out of the room, downstairs, and out of the house. They went to their hideout and stayed there until about midnight. When they left the hideout, they went back to Kicker's house, even though they knew that their parents would still be there. When they got there, their parents grabbed them as soon as they walked through the door. They took them home, took their cigarettes and booze off them, showed them that they were grounded indefinitely and sent them to bed. What they didn't realise is that the kids had loads more cigarettes and booze stashed away in their bedrooms. The next day when the kids got up, they knew that their parents would check their school bags, so they sneaked outside and hid their booze and cigarettes in the garden. Then, instead of going straight to school, they hid until all of their families had gone out. Then they grabbed their stuff, met at the swing and went to school. When they got to school, instead of going straight to registration, they went round the back of the school and stayed there, smoking and drinking. After about 2 hours, one of the teachers saw them and tried to take their cigarettes and booze off them, but they refused to hand it over. Then he said to them, "Right, all of you, come with me to Mr. Tinker's office now, please." The kids got up, making Mr. Apple think that they were doing as they were told. However, they just walked off the school premises and went to their hideout. When they got there, they stayed there smoking and drinking for a couple of hours. Then they decided to go back to Creeper's house to play video games and to carry on smoking and drinking. After about 3 hours, Creeper's dad came home and he heard them laughing and joking upstairs. When he went up, he said to them, "Why aren't you kids at school and why are you smoking and drinking when you know you're not supposed to?" "Oh, go away and mind your own business, Dad. We're old enough to do what we please," said Creeper. "Who do you think you're talking to, young lady? I'm your father. How dare you speak to me that way?" shouted Creeper's dad. "I'm talking to you, Dad. Now, get out of this room and leave us alone," said Creeper. "I will do no such thing. Now give me those cigarettes and all that booze, now please," shouted Creeper's dad. "No, we won't, Dad. This is ours and you're not getting it," said Creeper. Then, with the help of the others, Creeper pushed her dad out of the room, locked the door, and then they carried on smoking and drinking. After After another couple of hours, the kids decided that they were going out. When they went downstairs, Creeper's dad said to them, "Just where do you kids think you're going?" "Oh, mind your own business, Dad. It's got nothing to do with you, what we do," answered Creeper. Before Creeper's dad could stop them, the kids all walked out of the house. That night they didn't arrive home until past 1 a.m. When they did arrive home, their parents told them to hand over their cigarettes and booze, but they refused and told them it wasn't theirs to take. The next day when they went to school, they sat at the back of the building smoking and drinking again. This time Mr. Peas and Mr. Strawberry both caught them, and Mr. Strawberry said to them, "Get to Mrs. Tinker's office right now, all of you." The kids got up, grabbed the teachers, tied them up, took off their shoes, socks and trousers and gagged them. When Mrs. Tinker went to see what was going on after being informed of the situation by another pupil, and she saw the state of the teachers, she couldn't do anything but laugh. In between giggles, she untied them and said, "Let me guess, the Little Monsters gang did this." "Yes, they did. We caught them smoking and drinking again, so they did this to us and then left the school premises," said Mr. Peas. That day the gang all went back to Stumpy's house, but when they were approaching, they saw his dad's car parked outside, so they ran as fast as they could to the hideout. When they got there, they continued to smoke and drink, and they didn't go home until about 1 a.m. again. When they arrived home, their parents told them to go straight to bed. The next morning when they got up, their parents told them to hand over all their booze and cigarettes. They flatly refused, left the house, met each other at the swing, and went to school. When they got there, they saw Mrs. Tinker and a few other teachers were waiting for them at the school gate. Instead of going any further, they did about turn and ran as fast as they could to the hideout. When they got there, Kicker said, "Who fancies going to the Randall skate park for a while? I know I do." "Yeah, we all do, but what if our parents are home and we go back for our bikes and skateboards?" asked Creeper. "Who cares?" asked Stumpy. Everyone laughed and sneaked back home, got their bikes and skateboards, and rode to the Randall skate park. When they got there, they skateboarded for a while, and then they sat drinking and smoking for a couple of hours, and then they went back to the hideout. They eventually went home, and when they got there, their parents locked the doors, not realising that they had loads of copies of the keys for the front and back doors. They were told to go to bed as it was 11 p.m. and they did. The next day they all got up about 6 a.m, got ready for school and left home early. They went to school and climbed over the gate and sat in the school playground, smoking and drinking. However, what they didn't realise is that the staff were already there along with their parents. They came up behind them, grabbed them and took them to Mrs. Tinker's office. When they got there, she took all their booze and cigarettes off them. What's got into you kids? You're bright kids, all of you, so why are you behaving this way?" said Mrs. Tinker. "We're 13 now, miss, not 3. We'll behave how we want," said Stumpy. "Right, all of you will do unlimited detention along with extra work, and you'll catch up on all the work you've missed," said Mrs. Tinker. The kids just laughed, grabbed their cigarettes and booze, and ran out of Mrs. Tinker's office to the hideout. They stayed there all day and night, and when they eventually left, they all sneaked back to Bumpy's house. They stayed there smoking and drinking until their parents came home and caught them. They rang the rest of the gang's parents and they all went over there. When they got there, they sneaked upstairs to Bumpy's bedroom, grabbed them from behind and dragged them into their cars. The kids were all smacked hard on their bums by their dads and told they were grounded until further notice. The next day their parents took them to school and straight to Mrs. Tinker's office. When they got there, she said to them, "The punishment I gave you yesterday still stands." However, before she could finish saying everything she had to say, they ran out of the school office, off the school premises, went home, got their bikes and skateboards and rode to the Randall skate park. When they got there, they stayed there for a few hours. Then they went to the hideout. This time they stayed there for 2 days. When they eventually got home, their parents went crazy. This time though, the kids decided to cooperate. They all apologised to their parents and teachers. They caught up on the schoolwork they'd missed and did their detention and accepted that they were grounded and stayed in. After that, they never smoked or drank again. Well, almost never. I mean, they were little monsters, after all. The end. Hope you like it, guys. Thanks for watching. Love yous. Bye.